Thank you, Senator Scott. Senator Kaine, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, Ranking Member Inhofe, and congratulations to the nominees. You're well qualified for the positions for which the President has nominated you. Mr. Camarillo, there's been different pronunciations of your name today. Do you pronounce it Camarillo or Camarillo?
It's Camarillo with a Y sound.
Okay, so the Spanish pronunciation. Mr. Camarillo and Ms. Jacobson, this question is for you. Senator Inhofe asked a question about military housing, and Ms. Jacobson, you talked about your enforcement background, and that's great. I will say my disappointment on the military housing issue has been even greater internally with the Pentagon than it has been with the private providers, and I'm very disappointed in the private providers. But basically, you know, our troops didn't sign up to be somebody's tenant; they signed up to be in the U.S. military, and it's the U.S. military that owes them housing that's decent, and the U.S. military was asleep at the switch. They weren't enforcing contracts. Base commanders were giving out the end-of-the-year bonus money, just handing it all out without even checking to see whether the housing companies had provided quality service. On many bases, people, when they complained about the quality of housing, was being told, we can't do anything about it. It's a private contract now, which was false. They always had the ability to do something about it. So I guess what I want to ask you, Mr. Camarillo and Ms. Jacobson, is what will be your approach to kind of the internal aspect of managing this important housing function, whether it's privatized housing or barracks, and putting, you know, real accountability on the shoulders of base commanders and others to make sure that these contracts are supervised?
Senator Kaine, I'll start. Certainly, I start with the premise that it's unacceptable for us to put soldiers and their families in substandard housing. It's absolutely critical to our readiness. It's part of the compact that we have with the men and women who serve, and it affects our retention, our ability to retain talent that we definitely need in the Army. So it would be a top priority of mine, Senator, if I'm confirmed, to make sure that I work with Army leaders, including Ms. Jacobson, if she's confirmed, and the Secretary of the Army, to deal with it. What I've seen is that the Army has reorganized to tackle the problem, placing it, as she said, under the purview of the Army Materiel Command, a four-star commander. But beyond that, my understanding is the Army has also revised the metrics by which they evaluate these privatized housing companies. You know, things from how long it takes to get a maintenance work order processed, what is the quality of life, how quickly are improvements done at each particular facility. Certainly, if I'm confirmed, I would work with the Army leadership to ensure that these metrics accurately address the concerns. My understanding is also that there are regular monthly town halls at each installation at privatized housing units to be able to address those concerns. And so I would want to see what the results are of those efforts and fine-tune them and adjust as needed and work with Army leadership to do that.
Ms. Jacobson, do you have anything to add to that?
Senator, the reforms directed by Congress have been transformative with leadership from this committee to bring to light these important issues, and Secretary Wormuth has acknowledged that this affects recruitment, retention, and readiness. Housing is imperative. In addition to the reforms that Mr. Camarillo described, such as placing leadership in Army Materiel Command and making sure installation commanders have accountability, the NDA also creates a position of Chief Housing Officer within DOD, which is also important, so there's departmental-wide oversight of this issue, but also because there's the Tenant Bill of Rights that gives much more voice and participation to soldiers and their families and gives them rights to dispute and so forth to make sure that issues are being addressed. Plus, there will perhaps be more flexibility in these contracts going forward so that we can really bring accountability, rigorous enforcement of accountability on these issues. And I look forward to working with Mr. Camarillo and the rest of the DOD-wide on these important issues.
Excellent. Here's something that I would like your advice about should you be confirmed and have a chance to work in this area. I think the committee could be helped if you would provide advice on this topic. Some of the housing providers talk about the fact that they financed their capital improvements of military housing through issuance of bonds pursuant to a Treasury regulation. The bonds that were issued back in the 90s, they can't refinance them without either a change in the regulation or some action by Congress. The interest rates of those bonds are dramatically higher than what they would be if they were seeking financing now. And many of them have said if they could refinance, just like I could refinance my mortgage to today's rate, they could free up enormous money that they could put back into more capital improvements in military housing. I would like for you, at an appropriate time, should you be confirmed, to report back to the committee if there's action that we should take that would facilitate the refinancing of these bonds and free up more dollars that could be utilized to do capital improvements in housing. And should you be confirmed, I'll look forward to reaching out and hopefully getting your advice about that.
If confirmed, Senator, absolutely, I will look into this issue and report back to the committee.
Great. Thank you so much. Thank you, Mr. Chair.